Hi everyone, welcome to this video on tips on dealing with the heat on race day. Now some of these tips I actually got from or consolidated from a podcast that was on Fitter Radio about 6 weeks ago I think, so I can direct you to that podcast to listen to as well. And it was a really good podcast as well because it actually had a scientist who studies how to deal with heat, and in particular how to use heat protocols to improve performance in both hot and cold races or cooler races. So the first point I want to make is, and that the podcast makes as well, is you've got to control your core temperature from the start, and don't assume that you can run at a normal pace if it's hot, and then sort of back it off later and then still do okay, because it might actually be too late. If you go too hard at the start when it's hot, it could actually be too late. And they actually have a really good quote from Sebastian Kienle, who was the 2014 world champion, Ironman world champion. He actually said, "Heat is a one-way street." So basically, by the time you get too hot, it's too late, and you could end up walking or worse on race day. So basically, slow down in the hot race. Go slower than you think you can go. You may actually feel pretty good at the start, but that heat will accumulate, and just don't leave it too late to back off. So you can usually, if you've managed the race well, and this actually goes even just in general guidelines for pacing, even if it's regardless of the weather, is start off probably slower than you think you can go, and then build into it. You can usually often make up that time later on if you're feeling good in the last, say, 10 k's of the race. But if you've gone too hard at the start, you could be walking. So, and then that loses a lot of time. So slow down is the number one tip. Second tip is to cool yourself. There's lots of ways you can cool yourself during the race. There'll be ice water, there'll be ice, there'll be drinks, etc. So use those. One big tip is to actually get some ice, crush it and drink it and put it down into your mouth. So and the podcast actually talks about that, and it talks about the what happens is the ice, if it's crushed, and they actually talk about using ice slushies, which probably won't be available on the race, but it goes into the stomach and becomes like a heat sink. So it actually sucks the heat out of the stomach and then cools the blood sort of that way. So it's quite an interesting concept. The other thing is pour ice water on you, put ice say in your cap, put it on. I've done that before. Put ice down your front, your back, basically anywhere you can. It will cool you down, keep the skin cool, and therefore the core cool as well. So that's another tip. Then also sponges as well. If there's any sponges on course, put them sort of ice into your gear as well. So that's another one. The other thing related, obviously, is keep hydrated. It's essential to keep hydrated. Don't get dehydrated. It's really important that your plasma volume, your blood volume stays up, because that's the main mechanism that your body is using to cool itself down, is to get the blood flowing through the skin, getting perspiration, sweat, and getting rid of the heat that way. So that's really, really important. And I'll give another plug for this product that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, or might have been last week, Prepped. That's a really good way to increase hydration, and I won't go into a detail again how that works, but it's a really great product that a number of athletes many athletes in fact, have had great experience with that, including me, in keeping hydrated. So that's my other tip there. So alright, so that's the main ways to keep cool and manage heat on race day. What I'm going to do in the second part is actually to go into ways you can help with heat acclimation before the race as well. Try and get some sessions done in a warm environment. So if you're living in a hot environment that it's actually hot at the moment, then that's great. Get out there and train in the heat, in the warm environment. But I'd recommend only doing your sort of relatively easy sessions in that type of environment, because if it's really hot and you're trying to hit intervals, etc., it really does compromise your ability to hit those intervals in the right intensity. So yeah, keep it to the low intensity type workouts. What I could also advise is, what you can do is you can actually get into a sauna or a hot bath after sessions, and that's actually a really good way to acclimatise as well. You don't actually have to be necessarily riding or running in the heat. You can actually get into a sauna after sessions, and that's a fantastic way to do it that actually works, and studies have shown that works pretty well as well. What I recommend is maybe starting off at 15 up to 20 minutes for the first couple of times that you do that, and then maybe work it up to about 30 minutes. But be careful though, particularly if you're using hot baths. What I'd recommend is to get it up to, and you can actually use your Garmin watch, for example, and other watches have a temperature gauge on them. I'd get the bath up to about 40 degrees, but test it out, be careful. But once you've been in the bath, you're usually lying down in the bath. When you're getting out, just be really careful, because it can reduce your plasma volume and your blood pressure and make you lightheaded. So I've actually had the experience getting out of a hot bath where I felt quite lightheaded, and if the water's slippery, if the ground's slippery or the floor's slippery, for example, you might just be careful you don't slip. So I just use that as a tip. Just be careful when you're doing this. Now, to do it properly, you don't want to rehydrate during the sauna or the hot bath session. Part of the way this is working is actually causing dehydration and a drop in plasma volume or central venous pressure, which the body then responds to by increasing plasma output, so to increase your plasma volume. So it's it's an interesting mechanism of how this works. So you don't want to actually rehydrate during the session, and potentially not even for about half an hour after you get out as well. So you want to keep that prolonged heart rate up, the body hot, keep it up for a prolonged period after to get the maximum benefits after it. So yeah, that's basically what I'd recommend. The other point I want to make is, either way you're doing it, if you're in a sauna or a bath, or you're actually doing a session in the heat, sort of outside, you want to be trying to get your heart rate up to around about 75% of its maximum heart rate, so around about that level, and that's been shown to be about the optimal heart rate you want to try and get to and maintain. So basically that's my main tips. I'm happy to provide further information if you want to, and actually how to structure your sauna or hot bath sessions around the week. So if you want to shoot me some questions, and I'm more than happy to fine tune that for you. Otherwise, they're my main tips for dealing with heat. Feel free to put through any questions.